how much is there a honeypot everyone wants to grab, and how much do people exploit that based on who they know. Some airdrops have been tied to your voting participation as well, so that's another thing that encourages people to go out and vote and participate in the chain. I think one of the larger disagreements is the purpose overall of the Cosmos Hub. Is it meant to be something that's minimalistic?
Because they see like Joe is getting rich, Emma is getting rich, like why can't I do it?
A governance isn't necessarily having technical people who are running the validators vote on every proposal on the chain. So the transaction fees goes to stakers, and the treasury itself has a portion that was staked. And so that's where some of these originally came from. Phew, double wrecked. If only I was just double wrecked. I feel like I'm triple, quadruple wrecked by all of this. Oh, you're going to get me into trouble now.
Wow, that's interesting. So I didn't expect that, so it came as a surprise. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Claudio and this is Crypto OG, and joining me today is Vanessa, who I've happened to be interviewed by not too long ago on her channel to discuss Polkadot. So she's joining today to discuss Cosmos and also Team Kujira. We'll find out more about them. I'm sure you probably heard of Team Kujira if you've been watching this channel, because we have seen tweets from one of the parachain teams talking about them, and mentioning them working together. So hopefully we'll see if there's any sort of link there or what they can bring to the table. So Vanessa, thank you very much for joining. First of all, if you want to please introduce yourself, like how did you get started in crypto to begin with, if you want to give us a bit of background.
Awesome. Thank you, Claudia. I'm really great to be here. I love the, kind of returning the favor, coming on your channel. Hi to everyone that I haven't met. It's great to be here. So yeah, my journey in crypto is a kind of a long and winding one. And it started back in the early 2000s when I was doing some research for a college project on anonymous digital cash. Back then, we didn't have blockchain, but people were starting to look at, cryptographic techniques for doing things like detecting double spend. And I was just fascinated by this whole idea of bringing cash from the physical realm to the digital realm and preserving a lot of the properties that we see in cash today. Now fast forward many years later, obviously we have Satoshi coming out, and we've got Bitcoin and the concept of blockchain, which solves one of the biggest problems that we had back then in the early 2000s of having to rely on a trusted intermediary. Now with blockchain, we don't necessarily have to do that. So it's probably early 2013 or so when I became aware of Bitcoin, when I started looking into it. Unfortunately for me, as I looked deeper, the space just seemed super shady. We had Mt. Gox and Silk Road happening. I even have an old Mt. Gox account somewhere, but it seemed like it was too criminal for me to get involved. And I like to think that I'm a law-abiding citizen. So I stepped back for a few years. And then it was probably 2017. I just started dabbling to buy the coins just to see what they were all about. But 2019 was when it really hit for me. And I started to look at services like Compound and then, ultimately Aave and other types of services on Ethereum, where it clicked that it wasn't just a token that you're relying on someone else to buy it from you for a higher price, Bitcoin. But it was actually replumbing the entire financial system in a decentralized fashion. And that lit my fire. That's how I really, really got deep. And I started researching a lot of different coins, a lot of different chains, spent probably thousands and thousands of hours, whether it's learning the tools, trying the tools, researching, watching videos. It's really consumed me, and I think I'm just very passionate about the future. I know we're in the bear market right now, and there's a lot of challenges we're all facing, but the technology at the core seems to solve a problem that we have in society.
No, I totally agree with that. It's an interesting background. Like you started very early. I don't think I've met anyone that has started that early, at least not anyone that I've interviewed on this channel for sure. But yeah, amazing. And so I want to know now, like, is your background technical then? Are you like a developer, a programmer?
Yeah, so my background actually in school, I went to school for a degree in computer science, and that's where I started investigating a lot of it. I had a minor in mathematics and pure math, so the crypto side of me was very interested in just applying math to computer science and kind of merging the two. So I have a technical background, but my professional experience is in product management. So one step removed from engineering developers. I worked very closely with developers throughout my career, but I am not. I can copy paste from Stack Overflow. That's about the limit of my abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's awesome because like when we had our chat, I know you asked me a lot of technical questions with regards to Polkadot as well. So now I need to ask you, because I had obviously looked at your Twitter page and I saw that you are invested into different cryptocurrencies. So you're not like a maxi of just one, but I do notice that you know, you do have a bit of a passion for the Cosmos ecosystem. So I'd like to know, like, how did you get started into Cosmos, and why did you choose Cosmos out of everything? Like,
Yeah, and Cosmos was actually one of the first coins that I bought way back in the day, and honestly, it was just I was looking at the staking rewards. I'm like, oh, this is a high staking reward. Like I didn't know that the concept of proof of stake was still fairly new back then. I wasn't aware that of its pedigree. Basically, as one of the first proof of stake blockchains to solve the Byzantine generals problem. And so, yeah, all of that I wasn't aware of when I just kind of went in and started buying Cosmos. But since then, I've done a lot of research and understood some of the kind of technical benefits that it brings, the benefits from an ecosystem perspective. And we can definitely get into all of those in your channel as well.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, tell me about Cosmos. Like, what really excites you about Cosmos? So I obviously heard about Cosmos myself because it did launch before Polkadot, even though like my channel is mostly focused on the Polkadot content. But I didn't really like look in depth into it, and I obviously had some regrets because I didn't do that, because I know there were some really awesome airdrops along the way, you know, with Adam holding it. But what I found interesting with Cosmos is that you are actually rewarded for participating. So like, to me, that's really good. Like, they basically nailed it. They realized, okay, this is a good idea, you know, to get people to incentivize people to take part and not just hold stake and forget.
Three things about Cosmos that are very interesting, and obviously that there's a lot more, but three that really piqued my interest. The first of which, for people to understand, is that Cosmos isn't a single chain. It's a constellation of sovereign L1 blockchains that are built upon the Cosmos SDK. And at the core of it is something called IBC, which is the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol that allows messages to be sent essentially between different chains. You're in Polkadot, obviously very familiar with the parachain concept. A lot of similarities there. But to me, this idea that people can create a chain for a specific purpose, they can completely customize what that chain does, but still have the interoperability across the constellation of all chains. So that's one that's extremely powerful for me. And I think just the way that they've built it out, and you see lots of really strong chains coming. We'll talk a bit about Kujira. There's obviously Osmosis and a Cache and a number of different chains in the constellation. The second thing I love about Cosmos is this idea that they've built developer tooling to make some core primitives available to everyone. I'll talk a little bit about governance, which I know a lot of the earlier blockchains are still working through providing that governance. I'm big in the Cardano community. They're working on bringing governance there. I know Polkadot is working on bringing governance. Cosmos chains have it embedded as a core part of the functionality of just about every chain. So if you go to any wallet, if you go to kind of any chain's homepage, you will see a govern function with the ability to vote on proposals that come through, and all the technology is built in. So I think the fact that they've got the tooling and the fact that it includes core capabilities that are necessary is extremely, extremely important for the blossoming of the Cosmos chain. And then I think that the third thing that's interesting is just the level of technical capabilities that they give people. It's a high TPS. I think it maxes out at about 10,000 TPS per chain. So that's a lot of TPS you can have on an individual chain. It has fast finality, kind of guaranteed finality, which for folks who may not be familiar, a lot of chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, you're looking at probabilistic finality that requires multiple blocks to be produced to ensure that you're in the longest chain. Whereas chains like Cosmos have fast finality, guaranteed finality, so that after, I think it's anywhere from 2 to 6 seconds, depending on the chain, your transaction is guaranteed to be there. There's obviously downsides to Cosmos as well. Maybe we'll get into some of those, but those are the three things that really attracted me to it.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was really good. It's a nice breakdown. But now I do have a question in relation to deploying on Cosmos as an L1. I mean, is there any cost associated to that?
Yeah, my understanding is no. Well, so it's complicated. So there is definitely the cost of getting your own validator set, which could just be kind of effort that's employed or some other mechanism that you need to get a class of validators so you're reasonably distributed. Very recently, Cosmos introduced a function, the Cosmos Hub, which we need to separate from Cosmos, the ecosystem as a whole. So if you've bought Atom, you're buying the token of the Cosmos Hub, as it were. But all the other chains have their own tokens and that are used for various mechanisms. And so if you're in Cosmos Hub, they just launched a feature called replicated security. What is replicated security? It might be something that the Polkadot folks are very familiar with. It's a way to leverage the economic security of the Cosmos Hub when you're launching a chain. And so there is some sort of cost to it. Typically, people will take a portion of their staking rewards and pay those out to people who are staking Atom. But you get the benefit of the, half $1 billion of economic security without having to stand up your own validator set. You can leverage the validators that the Cosmos Hub is using. So that's a powerful concept that makes it even easier to launch a Cosmos chain.
Are all the channels open right now between, like, within the Cosmos Hub, between all the different L1s, or is there some limitation, and do they have to like submit like a governance proposal and open up those channels so they can have a communication as soon as you launch as an L1 on Cosmos Hub? What
I
is
think
the process there?
Generally, it requires some sort of governance process to get the channel opened on both sides. This is getting a little bit deeper than my technical knowledge, but as a chain, you have the option to choose which channels you open or not. And you also have the option of whether that's a governance process that your community does, or whether you hold the admin keys on your chain and maintain it all yourself. So there's a lot of flexibility there in how people can approach it, but generally, yes, sending and receiving chain needed. There's also, some issues as far as user experience is concerned in terms of how tokens need to be sent. They always need to come back through their home chain and then go onto the other chain. So I think very early still, but the technology is there to build on top of it things that make it very simple to transfer any token between any chain. Just right now, it's a little bit janky in certain places.
Okay, sounds like it shares some similarities to Polkadot because you also have to set up like you have to basically talk to the other team that you want to open up a channel with, and then you have to submit an on-chain referendum, to get that channel open. Yeah. Like in some cases, you won't even have to get the user voting. It'll just be like the council voting because a lot of these parachains don't actually have open governance. Open governance, as I've explained to you before when I was on your channel, is when basically the token holder, the coin holder, has the right to vote. So it's kind of similar now on Cosmos. So I want to get into the voting bit. In relation to Cosmos, I have noticed that if you are not an active voter, but you're staking with a validator, the validator has the right to vote on your behalf, which maybe you don't necessarily agree with what they're voting, but it's your fault because, you haven't voted, you haven't been active. So my question is now, am I still able to vote? Because I haven't actually tried that. If a validator has voted on my behalf, can I override that vote if the referendum is active, or do they have the say?
Yeah, so I think this is actually one of the things I really appreciate about the governance proposal. The way governance works in Cosmos is it relies on validators to vote, but as a staker, you always have the opportunity to override a vote. Okay. And it tends to have a fairly large, amount of participation. So I'm just kind of looking at the most recent ones. I guess it's not, quorum tends to go between anywhere from 30 to 60 or even higher % of stake voting. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean every person votes. As you said, the validator could be the one that's voting. And so I think that's part of just the way they've made the user experience so easy to add governance to every chain. It encourages people to vote. And because the transaction fees are so small, I think, voting is less than a cent in many cases. So it's, if you care about the chain, you're going to go and vote. You mentioned the topic of airdrops. Some airdrops have been tied to your voting participation as well. So that's another thing that encourages people to go out and vote and participate in the chain.
I want to know about the amounts though. So on Polkadot and Kusama, you can choose what amounts to vote, but I've noticed that on Cosmos, you just like hit yes, vote, or no, or abstain, and they're like vote with veto as well. So there are different types. So do you know, like if I vote yes there, does it actually use the full amount by default, or how does it actually work?
Yeah, so you're asking the amount of your stake if you wanted to split between, say, yes and abstain?
Yeah,
is the question?
In general, like if I want to vote like yes, for example, on a governance referendum, like does it use the full amount by default, or can I choose?
It'll use the full amount of your stake. I'm actually not sure why you would ever want to split your stake among different votes.
Maybe just like a lower amount. For example, let's say I'm staking 1,000 Atom and I only want to vote at 500 Atom. It's not possible, basically, because I'm like forced.
I've never actually done that. So if it's possible, I don't know. Okay, and I would assume not. It seems like pretty much an edge case of like you support a proposition, but you don't support it wholeheartedly.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's strange to me.
Yeah. No, it's just because on Polkadot and Kusama you can do that. You do have the flexibility to change the amount. So that's why I just wanted to know, if it's possible to do that on Cosmos. But yeah, I believe it's not, because I do remember voting. It has been a while since I did vote, but I remember you did use the full amount. Have you found like challenges within like referendums where there were like debates? Because like this happens on Polkadot all the time, especially on Kusama now with open governance, like where, say, for example, a content creator might be looking to get funding because they're covering the Cosmos ecosystem on their channel and they're doing content about it. And they're finding that challenging, like to get funding. Have you encountered anything like that? Like, have you seen any of those types of referendums with drama?
Yeah, there's definitely Cosmos drama, and there's kind of a running joke on crypto Twitter among the Cosmos community about all the drama that happens. I think, kind of in general, anywhere you have humans and you have money involved, there's going to be some level of politics and drama. And I think as we start to look at governance systems migrating to on-chain, to being on-chain governance and open, we invite the humanness of that drama in. So there's nothing special about blockchain that says, oh, we're going to do politics differently. It's the same thing, just now we have tools to ensure that it's transparent, to ensure that people vote based on their stake, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll give you a couple examples of the dramas that we've seen in Cosmos. There was a recent drama around Proposal 82, which you may have also heard of Atom 2.0, which proposed a number of different things on how to improve the Atom ecosystem and was supported by a lot of very prominent leaders in the community. And it was gaining a lot of steam and traction. Many of the influencers, many of the researchers are very pro Atom 2.0. It added a lot of utility to the Atom token and to the Cosmos Hub. However, Jay Kwan, who's one of the co-founders of Cosmos itself, was very much against it. So I don't know how much backroom shenanigans there was, but there was sort of an 11th hour overturning of Prop 82. Since then, some of the concepts like replicated security that we've talked about have been voted in, have been delivered. And so there was a large debate, got a lot of prominence there, and maybe some shenanigans going on. So that's one kind of example of the drama, which is just the core. Who are we? What are we doing as a chain? The other type of drama I see a lot of is, what's the purpose of the fund? And what should we be funding? So there was someone who got funded to create some videos about Atom. And then some other people were watching her videos and they didn't like her videos, so they tried to put forward a proposal to cancel the funding for the videos. And it's just, a little bit of the, how much is there a honeypot everyone wants to grab? And how much do people exploit that based on who they know? I don't know. I think that's just, an aspect of the politics that's coming in.
Was it even possible to cancel the vote? I mean, did it not just get the funding up front, or was it paid like in milestones?
It was, I think, a monthly funding or something like that from the treasury. But yeah, some people were then even grumpy enough to say, maybe we could pay them to stop making videos.
Okay.
I mean, this poor person, like, regardless of whether you think what they're creating is good or not, like they're putting time and effort into doing a thing. Yeah, and that drama is just not helpful to the entire Cosmos ecosystem, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the same on Polkadot and Kusama, so we do share a lot of similarities here, I think, in terms of ecosystems. And I think this is going to happen to other blockchains as well once referendums are going to go live, for sure. And have you noticed that in the bear market, people tend to be grumpier and saltier as well when it comes to voting?
Yeah, they're salty about everything.
Yeah.
I really hope this turns around, because it's a lot less fun being in the bear market than the bull market. Money aside, just people were more pleasant.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just difficult, isn't it? Because when your portfolio is impacted like that, you can, because, they say like never invest more than you can afford to lose. But let's face it, like a lot of people do invest more than they can afford to lose because they hope to get rich, off crypto, because they see like Joe is getting rich, Emma's getting rich. Like, why can't I do it? So that's how things are most of the time. And then there are those people are like the techier ones, who are focusing on the tech and trying to see the bright side of the blockchain tech and how it's changing the world. But then you have to go back to like, how many useful dApps do we really have out there, which Web2 users can be inclined to use? Because a lot of the dApps that I'm seeing right now are mostly used within crypto, right, by crypto folks within Web3. So in terms of the founders themselves, like the co-founders in Cosmos, like, have you found any kind of conflicts going on there? I know you were mentioning earlier about the Cosmos 2.0 situation, but have you noticed any kind of like arguments, disagreements there aside from the Cosmos 2.0 regarding anything that might put users off in Cosmos?
I think one of the larger disagreements is the purpose overall of the Cosmos Hub. Is it meant to be something that's minimalistic and basically a place where people can on-ramp into the Cosmos ecosystem and connect to other chains, but not have all the functionality? So for example, there aren't smart contracts right now on the Cosmos Hub. There are some who believe that it's, fairly prominent folks who believe it's important to add more utility and functionality to the Cosmos Hub. Personally, I don't have a strong opinion either way. Whatever's been done so far seems to have been working. It's reduces the attack surface area for the Cosmos Hub. It gives it a very clear purpose, and now with replicated security, it gives it a way to accrue value to the Cosmos Hub. So that's been one disagreement of like, what's the purpose of the Cosmos Hub? And you'll see this crop up in proposals like Sunny, who's one of the leaders on the Osmosis team, has been pushing forward something called mesh security, which rather than saying the Cosmos Hub is where you get all the economic security from and chains integrate with that, to say, actually, there's lots of really big sovereign L1s in Cosmos. Maybe they should share security in a way that doesn't depend on a hub and spoke model, but more a mesh model. And so I think that's an interesting way of tackling the why is Cosmos Hub the center of the universe when it doesn't do anything idea.
And I'm curious to get your thoughts on the incident that happened, with Terra Luna, as you know. That was a big hit to the Cosmos ecosystem for sure. That made a lot of noise everywhere, right? Everyone in crypto knew about that. And so I'm curious, like, how did the community handle that? I know that has impacted, for example, Osmosis, which is the biggest DEX on Cosmos. I've done a video a number of months ago on Osmosis, like an in-depth one going through it, the pros and cons, etc. And so I do know that it did suffer, right? Because we know that Luna was trading on there, right? And it had a lot of liquidity and volume. So like, how did you find the community handled that after that incident? Did they feel let down? Did they abandon Cosmos? Did they come back after abandoning it? Like, how did you feel it?
My personal experience was more as a member of the Luna community than a member of the Cosmos community. So just, full disclosure, that's kind of my personal bias that I'm bringing to this. For those of you who aren't aware, Luna was built on the Cosmos SDK. It uses the Tendermint consensus mechanism, and it was built on this idea that a decentralized economy needs decentralized money. Something I think very powerful that we start to see as bank accounts are failing and people's money is getting confiscated. Very powerful idea. At the core of it was a seigniorage mechanism, which effectively provided some level of capital efficiency through UST, which was their stablecoin. Now, Luna and UST pairs were available on Osmosis, on different parts of the Cosmos, and it was very well sort of integrated in terms of bringing that level of liquidity between, I forget the exact numbers, but it was definitely approaching, I think, 60 or $70 billion, the market cap of both Luna and UST. Both of them were at some point, I think, top 10 cryptos by market cap. Yep. And so when they exploded, they rugged liquidity from almost every Cosmos project. Osmosis was tremendously affected. And you can see its TVL just dramatically drop around the time that Luna collapsed. So it had a very hard impact on the Cosmos community and on the economic viability of a lot of projects. You can imagine if you're getting, even just in the shadow of Luna, some of that coming to your project in terms of transaction fees or however else you're extracting value from those interactions, that now you no longer have that. And then the entire crypto market crashing on top of it, right? Not just Luna, everything else went down as well. So
double wrecked, as they say in crypto, right?
Sure, double wrecked. If only I was just double wrecked. I feel like I'm triple, quadruple wrecked by all of this.
So basically a negative sentiment. But now I want to know, like, how about Juno? Because I have seen a lot of drama around Juno recently as well. I actually know one of the guys who runs Cosmos Spaces, and they weren't too happy about the internal situation with one of the, I think it was one of the devs at Juno, or was it one of the co-founders, who has caused basically Juno to not perform as it should have performed, So can you please talk about that, maybe if you're familiar with the situation?
Yeah, I'll say I'm not intimately familiar with a lot of what's happening on Juno. There was an incident, I want to say it's now a year or so ago, where the community felt like someone was abusing the airdrop process, and they basically voted to take his tokens away from him. And that should have been a huge red flag for everyone, because a community taking someone's tokens is, to me, seems like antithetical to the ethos of self-sovereignty, of everything Web3 is basically about. Now, I know there's been more recent drama. I can't comment too specifically on any of that drama.
What project, what L1, I should say, are you most bullish about in the Cosmos ecosystem, knowing what you know now and having done your research on everything?
Yeah, and I do need to preface this with none of this is financial advice or an inducement to invest. I'm very much on the technical side, so I get excited by technology. Who knows how well it will do? So please use caution and just get excited by the technology. To your question, the L1 I am most excited about is Kujira. And Kujira, I think, is building a fascinating suite of decentralized finance offerings that will ultimately be very accessible to end users and bring the complete suite of offerings from money markets and borrowing and lending to DeFi, and the ability to have at the center of it all a limit order book stacks, which is something that's fairly unique in the decentralized world. It's obviously, we're all familiar with them from the centralized exchanges, but I think the other thing that's really impressed me about Kujira is the speed at which the team moves to produce really high quality experiences. And yeah, for full disclosure, I'm a Kujira senator. The Senate in Kujira is focused very much on administering the community fund that we have and evaluating grant proposals. And Kujira has leaned very hard into how do we be grown up in this world of immature crypto. And one way, for example, that they've leaned into that is what is grown up DeFi? Well, it's something that can accrue real yield rather than paying people out an inflating token and essentially rugging them with a token, right? You provide liquidity, we've all seen this happen, and suddenly your token, which used to be worth $10, is now worth 10 cents, and the 10,000% APR is not worth anything. And so they're leaning into like how can we create a system that generates real yield and then distribute that yield back to stakers. Likewise, they're leaning into what does it look like to do grown-up governance? A governance isn't necessarily having technical people who are running the validators vote on every proposal on the chain, because there's obviously different sets of expertise. So they're trying to figure out, well, how can we have governance be something that also leans into these different sets of expertise and partition it in a way that the right people get an opportunity to contribute to the right decisions.
Interesting. And now I am curious about this, like with Team Kujira, like how are you finding the governance system there? Obviously, I'm assuming it's not going to be as big as the one on Cosmos. How do you see governance participation there? And does it actually work the same as with Cosmos? So can you stake on Kujira and then on one of the validators, and then can the validators vote just like on Cosmos, or how does that work?
Yeah, actually, if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen
Yeah, sure.
and I'll walk through a quick demonstration here. Can you see my screen?
I can, yeah.
Great. So this is the chain governance in Kujira Blue. Blue is essentially their kind of home-based dashboard that includes your wallet and various other functions. And they have 3 different options in governance currently. The first option is what you're familiar with in all of the Cosmos chains, which is this open governance that's the entire community can vote on different things. So you can see they've got a list of different proposals that have come through here. And you can view the proposal. This one's actually gone through, and it's the same kind of voting that you would expect on any Cosmos chain, right? You can vote yes, no, abstain, or no with veto. And anyone can propose a proposal. You do need to have some amount of Kuji, which is their native token, in order to get the proposal to show up. And to actually propose it. This helps to mitigate against spam. But that's one aspect of their governance, right? So that's the core of everything they do. They are a semi-permission chain, so they're not completely permissionless. So to launch or update a smart contract, you need to go through a governance mechanism here. There's 2 other aspects to their governance that they're also adding on, and this leans into where I talk about grown-up governance and how we provide the governance functionality to everyone based on their expertise. The first of which is the Senate. As I mentioned, I'm part of the Senate. The Senate's specific role is to manage their treasury. There's a much larger community fund. We have a portion of it that's currently under the control of the Senate. And you can see that the Senate itself has a multi-sig that votes on various different proposals here. So what does this do? Why do we have a Senate? The reason to have a Senate is if you have grant proposals going back and forth and just the entire community voting on it, you don't get the level of due diligence on each proposal that you would expect. People just look at it. Maybe a validator's got 100 different proposals across different chains to vote on, and they don't have the time to, interview the people, to set up grant application forms, to do all of that due diligence. That's where the Senate helps. And the idea here is to be very effective in how the community fund is deployed.
Sorry, I have
And
a
then
question with regards to that treasury. I've noticed there that the treasury doesn't only hold Kuji, which is the main coin, but also other ones like even Osmo further down, even DOT. There's only one there, but like even like USK, USDC, which I'm assuming is some sort of stable coin within the ecosystem or within the actual within Kuji itself. Can you please talk about that? Like, how come you can actually do that?
yeah, so this gets back to the real yield aspect of Kujira. The yield that's paid out to people who stake Kuji is paid out in a basket of tokens based on the kind of trading that's done. So I'm going to show you, this is an example. This is their limit order DEX called Fin. When you trade on Fin, there's a number of different pairs that you can trade here. So they have a
Oh,
fairly
okay, I see.
complete list of these pairs. And when
Yeah.
you trade, you're paying a small fee for each of them. This is just one value accrual mechanism. And the fee is paid in those tokens. So if I'm trading WETH and USK being the over-collateralized stablecoin on the Kujira blockchain, then the people who are staking will get a little bit of WETH and a little bit of USK based on their transaction.
Okay, so does the transaction fee then go into the treasury?
So the transaction fees goes to stakers, and the treasury itself has a portion that was staked. And so that's where some of these originally came from. Now there's a management part on the Senate to figure out exactly how do we approach some of these, right? So clearly you can see a large part of the treasury, or at least the treasury that's currently in the Senate's control is all in Kuji. And then over time, it's being distributed to stables to be able to fund some of the grant proposals. So there's two stables here are Axel USDC, which is bridged USDC through XLR, and USK, which is the over-collateralized stablecoin that we just talked about. Yeah, and then the third option here for governance is what they're calling a sentinel. So these are certain proposals the Sentinel will be able to vote on. They're very technical contributors. So we've got some of the core developers of the Kujira team as well as some close partners. And the intention here is to be able to very quickly launch certain technical things on the chain that don't necessarily require the 48 hours of voting for governance. This is important because it allows them to respond very quickly if there are issues that are happening that they need to, very quickly say like, oh, stop something. It was very sad to see a lot of the governance proposals on Terra at the point that it was collapsing. And the governance proposals had 6 days and 20 hours left to complete. And there's just nothing you could do. You were just sitting there waiting while we watched everything collapse. It was very sad.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, it had a big impact on every crypto ecosystem, I think, as a whole.
Yeah.
So many people believed UST was the biggest stable coin out of all of them,
Yeah.
And they actually trusted it more than USDC and obviously Tether. Tether had the most was under the most scrutiny, and it still is. But it seems like USDT is the actual safest one out of all of them. So because as you know, there was an issue with USDC recently. So yeah, thank you for explaining that, Vanessa. I really appreciate it. And I do have to ask you because obviously you do have some bias here with Team Kujira working with the team. What would you say are your second and third most favorite L1s on the Cosmos ecosystem, and why?
Oh, you're going to get me into trouble now.
This is Vanessa speaking, not Vanessa from Team Kujira, like the other side of Vanessa, the one that, sees Cosmos as a whole, appreciates the ecosystem and finds value, and obviously in other projects as well.
Yeah, so one I very much appreciate is Secret Network. So Secret Network is they're leaning into being a privacy network and then building up different protocols like Shade Protocol, which is essentially decentralized finance on Secret Network. One of the challenges today, for example, if you're doing any sort of trading, is that people can see it's transparent on the blockchain. So there's opportunities to do front running. There's opportunities to follow a whale and copy trade and all of those other things that might reduce your returns if you're actually a really good trader. And so by having that level of privacy and Shade Protocol building their own set of DeFi primitives on top of it, I think that's a really interesting space to be in. I'm also quite impressed at the approach that their native stablecoin Silk is taking. So Silk is a stablecoin that's collateralized by, or it seeks to track a number of different currencies, not just the USD, but I think it's got Bitcoin and gold and a couple other things in there as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I'm aware of Secret Network. I know they're an old team in the system, in the ecosystem they've been building for quite some time. So yeah, cool. I appreciate that. What would you say is your third one then?
I just have to say the Cosmos Hub. I like the fact that it's been, fairly simple. It's a place where people can on-ramp easily. And they're starting to accrue value to it. So I see, ultimately, even though we might talk about mesh networking within the Cosmos, I think we're still very much a hub and spoke model. And I think that's okay. It's okay to have that for a while until we can mature the entire ecosystem.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. That's interesting. So I didn't expect that. So it came as a surprise. Cool. Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate you coming on and explaining this. Is there anything final that you want to share with regards to Team Kujira or Cosmos that you think the audience should hear about?
Yeah, so we didn't talk a little bit about Orca, and Orca is the liquidation engine that Kujira has. And the reason Orca is so interesting, I'm just sharing on the screen here so people can get a sense of it, is it allows you to bid on assets that are being liquidated, either through their money market, which is Ghost, where you can borrow and lend coins, or when you mint USK, which is their stable coin, so you can use different types of collateral to mint it. Well, all of that gets managed and liquidated through Orca. This is great because it allows humans a fair opportunity to bid on the liquidations, and bots are really second-class citizens. There's a lot of features they've built in, like forcing you to wait if you're a bot. And so I think this was what the team originally had built on Terra, was their first project. And it's come over and it's worked fantastically well. But this is what ensures that, for example, the USK stablecoin doesn't accrue bad debt, or any of the lending and borrowing markets continue to operate without any of that bad debt. It's a fantastic feature. I think it's the centerpiece of everything that Team Kujira does. And yeah, encourage everyone to go and check it out.
Cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing that. That's interesting. So yeah, now I've learned more about Team Kujira. I believe, if I remember correctly, one of the parachain teams, Akala, in the Polkadot ecosystem has mentioned that they're doing some work with Team Kujira. I'm not sure entirely what they're doing, but I know that they're also the biggest DeFi platform within the Polkadot ecosystem. So I'm assuming that there'll be some sort of partnership going on there. So we'll see how things go. Vanessa, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for watching. And if you want to check out Vanessa, I will be posting a link to her Twitter page and also to her YouTube channel down in the description and in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.